Hello Quokkalings, welcome to this episode of Nanashi Cooks. Today, we're going to be making one of my favorite dishes, Shabu Shabu, and to do that, we're going to need to do some prep. First, let's start off with some green onions, which we are going to give a good rinse under the tap to remove any dirt or grit on them. These green onions are going to be used for one of our dipping sauces later in the video, and by keeping them clean, any onions we don't use can be stored for later use in a container. Oops. It was at this point I remembered I'm right-handed, so bringing the camera over here, we can give you a good view of the cutting process. Thinly cutting some green onions is a good test to see if your knife is well sharpened. We want to be able to slide through the onion with one motion of the knife versus pushing down and crushing it with a dull knife. As you can see though, even with a sharp knife, sometimes my cuts don't go all the way through, and that's okay. We can take this opportunity to practice our technique so that with each slice we're getting better and better at cutting green onions. To get the most of our green onions, we'll want to cut all the way down to the white bulb, roughly an inch before the roots. If the taste of the green onions is too strong and you'd like a lighter taste from them, I found that you could rinse and squeeze the cut green onions in a cheesecloth before using them. And with our onions prepared, now we can move on to our main veggie, the Napa cabbage. This time, we're going to start off with peeling individual leaves of the cabbage away from its main body, up until the point where you feel comfortable with the amount you're going to eat. I've myself found that 3 to 4 of the bigger leaves is a good amount for one person, increasing it to 5 to 6 for 2 people, and so forth. For today's demonstration, we'll be separating 6 leaves from the main cabbage, a good amount for 2 people. With that, it's back to the sink for more rinsing. Today, we'll be eating our Shabu Shabu with just Napa cabbage, but other chefs sometimes like to include enoki mushrooms, carrots, glass noodles, chrysanthemum greens, and many more goodies. Feel free to try out different combinations of sides to find out what you like. Also, be aware that sometimes the cabbage will have black blemishes on some of its leaves called pepper spots. In most cases, this is purely cosmetic and safe to eat. In fact, it does not change the taste of the cabbage. However, sometimes those black dots can be an indicator of the presence of mold. So please use your discretion when choosing which leaves are safe to eat. Back to our cabbage prep, we're going to stack up our washed leaves together for some cutting. We'll be cutting roughly an inch off the bottom of our stack. These pieces are usually too thick for quick cooking in Shabu Shabu, so I tend to remove them, though they are still edible if desired. It's not shown in the video, but please place the leaves with their arch facing upwards, away from the cutting board to make this and subsequent cuts easier, as its arch will support the weight of the cabbage on its own. With that, we're going to carefully cut straight down the center divide of the stack, separating our single stack into 2. From here, we'll have 2 manageable piles of cabbage that we can start cutting into 1-inch pieces. Again, we'll want to use the length of our kitchen knife to help cut down through the layers of cabbage. As a wise chef said and still says, let the knife do the work. Once you're done cutting through the second stack of cabbage, we can go ahead and place them on a plate or in a bowl for when we start cooking later. From here, we'll move on to preparing our basic Shabu Shabu stock, the soup that we'll be dipping all of our goodies into. These days, there are many varieties of stock that people like using, ranging from strong spicy flavors to some that are more mild and subtle. Personally, I like keeping the flavor of my Shabu Shabu stock towards the more mild side, which means I can taste more of the veggies and meat that goes into our pot. Coincidentally, the method I'm about to teach you today provides just that, with 2 simple ingredients, dashi kombu, which is typically dried seaweed, and water. And so, to get our basic Shabu Shabu stock going, we're going to combine 1 or 2 pieces of dried kombu in a large pot with water. We'll go ahead and bring that up to a boil. The amount of water will vary with your pot, but for my own pot, I tend to fill it up either halfway or 3/4 of the way up. While that's coming up to a boil, let's make our 2 dipping sauces for the evening, starting first with a ponzu dip. We'll be combining our sliced green onions from earlier with some store-bought ponzu sauce, which is a type of soy sauce made with a bit of citrus. Next, for our second sauce, we'll be making a goma dare dip, which comprises of toasted sesame seeds, store-bought goma sauce or peanut sauce, and some shichimi togarashi, which is a type of Japanese chili pepper. Mix well, and there you have it. Both sauces can be adjusted to your taste with varying amounts of ingredients, so experiment, and try to find out what fits your palate. And to quickly note, all of these ingredients can usually be found in Japanese markets. With that, we'll go ahead and check it in our pot, which should have been boiling with the kombu in it for a few minutes, enough to see a light green change to the water. Once you see that light green color, go ahead and take out the kombu from the pot, and you'll have in your hands a basic yet effective Shabu Shabu stock. Be careful not to boil the kombu for too long in the pot, otherwise your stock will become slimy. Now this is where we can start the cooking in earnest. We're going to start off with cooking the Napa cabbage, though the order of which you decide to cook your ingredients is up to you. The beauty of this dish is that depending on the order of what you put into the pot, the flavor of the shabu shabu stock will change the taste of the next ingredients you put in. So experiment and have fun with it. Back to our Napa cabbage, the cook time will vary between the thickness of the cabbage leaf and how well done you'd like these veggies. I enjoy a bit of crunch from my Napa cabbage, so I tend to leave the thinner pieces of Napa cabbage in for roughly 30 seconds to a minute, while leaving the thicker pieces in for a minute or two. While we wait for the cabbage to cook, why don't we talk about the history of shabu shabu for a bit? Shabu shabu, as we know it today, was invented in Japan in the mid-20th century in Osaka. A restaurant named Suehiro, owned by its president Chuichi Miyake, registered the name of the dish in 1952. Since then, the dish has gained more popularity in the Kansai region, and by 1955, shabu shabu started to be found in many restaurants in Tokyo. The origins of the dish was thought to be traced back to a Mongolian hotpot dish made of mutton, called Shuanyangyo, due to the similarities in the cooking method and pots. Another possible origin stems from another type of Japanese hotpot called mizutaki, which has many different variations, but is always based on using simple water or dashi stock without additional flavorings. As time passed, many other shabu shabu variations started to pop up across Japan, including wakame, or seaweed, hamo, or eel, buri, or yellowtail, tako, or octopus, kurobuta, or pork, and tori, or chicken, shabu shabu. The name shabu shabu itself derives from an onomatopoeia for the sound that the ingredients make when stirred in the cooking pot, roughly translated to swish swish. On that note, and with that brief history lesson, it seems our cabbage has been cooked. Now we can move on to our meat, which we bought at our local Japanese supermarket. If you're trying to find a similar meat anywhere else, what you'll want to do is look for thinly sliced cuts. Tonight, we'll be cooking some beef. Due to the thinness of the meat, cooking the meat shouldn't take too long. After going into the boiling water and giving it a few swishes, the meat should be cooked enough for consumption. Be careful about adding too many slices at once to the pot, as this will drastically increase the time it will take for the cuts to cook, due to the decreasing temperature of the boiling water. My recommendation would be to cook 1 or 2 slices to enjoy immediately while the water rises up to a boil. Once you're done with your first 2 pieces, the water should be ready for another round of meat. After cooking the meat for a bit, sometimes a sort of white and brownish foam will rise to the top of the pot. This is called scum, which is the denatured proteins of the meat we just cooked. Sometimes you'll hear that you want to skim the top of the broth to remove it, but other than aesthetics or making a clear stock, this foam can be left in. However, the leftover broth can be used for another dish that I'll detail in a separate video next time. And with that, we've made some shabu shabu together. I hope you enjoyed the video and your meal, and if you did, please consider subscribing to my channel for more cooking videos and streams in the future. I also have a Twitter linked in my description where I announce new videos and upcoming streams. I hope you had a lot of fun cooking with me today. And until the next video, my Quokkalings, this is Chef Nanashi, quacking out.